ninjas, dinosaurs, outer space, and more. Between the years of 1982 and 1994, G.I. Joe, a real American hero, certainly didn't shy away from including more and more concepts into an already vast range of heroes and villains. By 1993, G.I. Joe had already proven itself time and time again, but now in a crowded industry with other kid-targeted products all occupying the same retail space, the toy line still had to go through some changes to stay relevant for a little while longer. Yes, it's well known to fans that the line ended just 1 year later in 1994. However, that didn't stop Hasbro as a toy company from at least trying to swing for the fences, knowing that they were in a now or never situation to either go big or go home. Alas, there were plenty of sub-teams as well as Mailaways for the G.I. Joe year of 1993. Some were carryovers from previous years, while others were entirely new as part of the 1993 effort to keep up with the rest of the competition. But in any case, it's worth a closer look. Let's begin. With 1993 being such a massive year for G.I. Joe in terms of the number of releases, I've covered the Street Fighter G.I. Joe crossover subline in its own toy history segment, as well as another segment for the Battle Corps, which represented the broad-reaching mainline release characters for G.I. Joe in '93. That'll allow me to focus on the wide range of sub-teams G.I. Joe had for this year in this video, along with the new mail-in toy offers, which for 1993 was the most numerous out of all the years for G.I. Joe. Now, as part of the aforementioned Street Fighter history segment, as well as the Battle Corps history segment, I did already discuss some of the wide-sweeping changes that Hasbro faced with the G.I. Joe brand. But it is important to repeat at least some of this information as part of telling the rest of the story. Summarizing quickly though, the card back sizes were changed to be slightly larger to match card sizing of other items at retail during this time. The weapons tree was also added, with the weapons now being attached to sprues rather than the more loosely packed accessories that we'd seen in the past. And the choking hazard label was added for safety reasons. In terms of performance at retail, I've also already mentioned the $88 million sales figure for G.I. Joe in 1993. But to give more context, I came into the sales graph recently relative to the timing of this video. You'll see the G.I. Joe sales in red relative to the sales in blue, which indicates the total sales for boys' toys across all US companies. And this chart covers the years of 1982, which is the debut year for G.I. Joe, a real American hero, and goes all the way up to 1993. As a comparison, all the way back in 1983, G.I. Joe sold $87 million worth of product, which was a good sales figure relative to the $486 million sold across all boys' toys for US companies, and G.I. Joe would be on the rise for the immediate years after. But by 1993, a comparable sales figure of $88 million was a much smaller size of the pie relative to the nearly $1 billion that was sold across boys' toy brands all around, thus painting a bit of a picture as to what was going on in the industry at this time. We've talked a bit in past videos already too about the rising competition of the 1990s that was eating up some of this market. Credit for finding the information in this slide goes to the non-profit Joe Declassified group that has worked to educate fellow G.I. Joe fans over the years on behind the scenes as well as pre-production information. And further credit goes to 3djoes.com for cleaning up this slide for modern presentation purposes. Additionally, former G.I. Joe product manager and Hasbro vice president of boys' toys, Kirk Bozigian, also once recalled that the information on this slide was originally prepared by the Griffin Bacall Advertisement Agency for a Hasbro annual State of the Business review. Looking at the toys now, Ninja Force is the obvious sub-team that carries over from 1992 into 1993. Complete with their spring action feature on the figures. Here we got another version of Snake Eyes, who's somebody you'd obviously want to include in such a sub-faction. We got a character named Banzai, who designer Kurt Groen has stated that the mask for Banzai was designed to resemble that of a Japanese rising sun symbol. Here's Bushido with his samurai mask, and he's listed on his file card to be the blood brother of Banzai. Scarlet is a great addition into the sub-faction for Ninja Force, and she's unique in that she's a female character that got more than one version in the 82 to 94 G.I. Joe line. 1993 was truly her year in the comics, because not only would you see her in her Ninja Force getup, but she'd also end up working as a double agent this year. Going undercover as she pretends to work for Cobra, she finds herself not only face to face with Cobra Commander, but also with the Decepticon Megatron in a Transformers crossover. And she even takes the time to reminisce back with General Hawk about one of her earlier missions. Rounding out the heroic ninjas would be Jinzu, a student of Storm Shadows, and he was packed in with one of the Ninja Force vehicles, namely the Ninja Raider Pile Driver. The Ninja Lightning Cycle was the other heroic Ninja Force vehicle this year, and it was noted by Hasbro's Vinnie that this vehicle sold far more units than the other Ninja Force vehicles this year, at somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 units. The Cobra side of Ninja Force quite notably added the fan favorite Master of Disguise known as Zartan. He was joined by another version of the Ninja Swordsman, namely Slice, now wearing orange rather than red from his 1992 appearance. We also got a revised version of the Cobra Night Creeper as part of Ninja Force, and another army builder for Cobra would be the mercenaries known as the Red Ninjas, and the Red Ninja as a figure came packed in with a vehicle known as Cobra's Ninja Raider Battle Axe. And while G.I. Joe was no stranger to releasing space-themed toys before 1993, Hasbro felt it was time to take that next step. That said, before Star Brigade was fleshed out, the thought was to develop a futuristic military segment known as Techno Joe, and amongst the Techno Joe items would be the precursor to what would become the Armor Bot. You'll see a green-colored foam model of the Armor Bot in one of the G.I. Joe catalogs, but taking things a bit further back, there was also a prototype made by designer Bill Young of an olive drab green and black terrestrial vehicle that wasn't originally designed as a specific space vehicle. Once it was decided to go ahead with Star Brigade, the colors were changed up and we got the Armor Bot that hit retail shelves. The Armor Bot was included with a version of General Hawk, who on his file card is somehow back to the rank of Brigadier General, even though he was a higher-ranking Major General in his 1992 Talking Battle Commanders release. You'll notice Hawk is on a larger body, and such figures would become a subset of Star Brigade known as Armor Tech. That said, during development of that Techno Joe futuristic military before it evolved to be part of Star Brigade, Vinnie further shared that these larger suits were inspired by exosuits we were seeing in shows such as Exo Squad. But it became evident that Hasbro wanted G.I. Joe to make that jump into space. To keep up with the competition, they knew that Playmates had a line of Star Trek figures based on the successful Star Trek The Next Generation television series. That and word had gotten out that Kenner was likely to bring back Star Wars. Yes, Kenner was now owned by Hasbro at this point, but with Kenner still having separate offices in Cincinnati, Ohio, and still existing as its own division within the greater Hasbro corporate structure, it bred internal competition with G.I. Joe, whose staff were located in Rhode Island. So as Armor Tech was developed and included into Star Brigade eventually, Hawk would be joined by characters like Robo Joe, who was loosely based on and inspired by the RoboCop film. Existing favorites like Heavy Duty joined the Armor Tech grouping as well. Duke joined Armor Tech also, giving us yet another version of the team's field leader. And we got another version of Rock and Roll, who was released both with yellow accessories and then again released with purple accessories. Destro would lead the Armor Tech Star Brigade villains for Cobra, and we also got another version of the Cobra Bats, now dubbed as the Battle Armored Android Trooper rather than just Battle Android Trooper like it was dubbed in the past. And because Armor Tech figures were at a different price point, we had regularly sized Star Brigade figures as well. Here's Countdown, the Combat Astronaut, and then here's Ozone, now moving over from Eco Warriors into the Star Brigade sub-team. And note that Ozone also got a second color scheme this year. Here we have Payload, and interestingly, he was meant to use the mold from the 1987 version 1 and 1989 version 2 Payload of the past. But due to a lack of availability with his tooling, Hasbro opted to use the Eco Warriors Barbecue from 1992 instead and give the figure a green color for payload. You'll notice that the prototype on the file card shows payload in his original mold, so thus we know that this was the initial intent. A heroic fan favorite, Roadblock, the Joe's heavy machine gunner, joined Star Brigade as well. G.I. Joe's Star Brigade lineup also had another version of sci-fi, and he was packaged in with the Starfighter, which was a recolor of the 1988 Cobra Stellar Stiletto. For the Cobra side, the Astro Viper was a natural addition into Star Brigade. And Cobra also had the Targat, or Trans-Atmospheric Rapid Global Assault Trooper. And for vehicles, Cobra's Pogo Ballistic Battle Ball was recolored into the Invader, thus giving the bad side their Star Brigade vehicle this year. Note that the card art is reused across these standard sized Star Brigade figures, and the art shows Payload battling the Astro Viper. Time constraints resulted in this card art being duplicated between releases rather than being unique to each figure. The Mega Marines and Mega Monsters formed another subset of sorts for G.I. Joe in 1993, whereby Hasbro was, in their own way, revisiting what was going on with the Alien franchise, all the while putting their own spin on it.
You Cobra monsters are pretty tough, but I'm gung-ho!
Gung-ho was the leading face for the Mega Marines, being the commander on the heroic side. Now, with Hasbro acquiring Tonka in 1991, one brand that they got in the deal was Play-Doh. They came up with the idea for using Play-Doh as moldable bio-armor for the Mega Marines. That said, they never did end up actually calling it Play-Doh despite the material, and in fact, Play-Doh itself was being manufactured domestically in the US, while the moldable bio-armor was being made in China. Joining Gung-Ho on the heroic side of the Mega Marines would be the flamethrower known as Blastoff. Mirage was also on the team as a bio-artillery expert, and another classic character, Clutch, joined the ranks as well. And the Joes' vehicle for this range would be the Monster Blaster APC, with its lock-and-load missile-firing cannon. The Monster Blaster did have some variations to it, with the green being a different shade between versions. The villain side would consist of the Cyber Viper as well as the Mega Vipers, the latter of which were the trainers for the Mega Monsters. As for the Mega Monsters themselves, we had the oversized, DNA-altered Bio Vipers, and likewise, they were joined by the Monstro Vipers. One thing about the Mega Monsters was that they were not supposed to be the size that they ended up being. But by the time the G.I. Joe brand team realized the oversized proportions of the toys being produced, it was too late to make the change at the time. Like some of the Star Brigade figures, the Mega Monsters also did not receive unique card art, keeping more generic presentation art between the figures. Now, one thing I do want to ask is if you happen to be enjoying this video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, press that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future Toy Connections video content. Yes, it's a small effort for you, but it'll go a long way towards helping me with growing this channel. And in an attempt to keep up with Jurassic Park and its release into theaters during 1993, Hasbro would release a special Toys R Us exclusive box set known as the Dino Hunters Mission Playset. Here we'd see versions of Ambush as well as Lowlight packed in with the set. And the vehicle included was largely a reuse of the 1988 Desert Fox. The dinosaur, though, is often the topic of conversation amongst collectors, particularly due to the goofy nature of the toy that we got. Now, initially, Hasbro was actually going to license a dinosaur from Imperial Toys, and you can see the side-by-side comparison here between the dinosaur that Hasbro planned to use and the one that we got. It turned out that the 1985 Imperial Toys dinosaur had arms that were too thin and thus unable to pass Hasbro's internal quality standards at the time. As such, Hasbro had to tool up a new dinosaur and reshoot the photography on the packaging. That said, the eventual dinosaur's arms were tucked in and molded onto the toy, thus reducing the functionality. And I do want to take a moment to thank Patrick Stewart as well as Philip Donnelly from the Articulated Points YouTube channel, as they were the ones who provided the imagery and footage to make this comparison possible between the original Imperial Toys dinosaur and the G.I. Joe Dino Hunters one. You can subscribe to their channel by following the link in the video description listed below. The various mail-away offers gave children tons of options this year. For example, another subgrouping came in the mail and was called the Arctic Commandos. This set consisted of revised versions for Stalker, Sub-Zero, DJ, and the Snow Serpents. Here's the International Action Force 4-pack, which name-wise was probably an homage to the Action Force International Heroes brand that ran during the late 80s in Europe. This particular International Action Force set consisted of Spirit, Budo, Big Ben, and Big Bear. The 1991 Battlecopters got new mail-away versions this year, but now without the Battlecopters themselves. So here's Major Altitude for the Joes and Interrogator for Cobra. Individual mail-in offers included this shiny version of the Deep Sea Diver, Deep 6. And then we had this neon version of General Hawk wearing a recolored version of his flight gear outfit from 1991. Now, Cobra's answer to the G.I. Joe Steel Brigade was this Create-A Cobra figure offer. Now for the villain side, you could customize your own character's name, traits, and abilities. Lastly, we had a grouping advertised as the Rapid Deployment Force, albeit the set consisted of re-releasing existing, previous versions of Fast Draw, along with the Night Force versions of Repeater and Shockwave. The Rapid Deployment Force did come with different accessories for the figures compared to their original releases, and the Pocket Patrol pack itself was issued in a black color rather than the traditional green from its earlier release. Hasbro also offered several in-pack mini-comics and trading cards. And as can be seen, G.I. Joe tried to be anything and everything all at once by 1993, with its military roots as the overarching theme to tie it all together. Perhaps it was too much, or perhaps Hasbro was just doing what it needed to do in order to keep Joe alive. 1993 was a time that we'd see a shift in pop culture, partly in the world of toys and children's entertainment, like we've already discussed. But as another example, 1993 was also the year when things like the long-running sitcom known as Cheers would conclude its 11th season run, and in some ways be succeeded by its spin-off, Frasier. 1993 was also very much a peak year in grunge music as well, shifting the trends away from the hair bands and popular rock and roll style of the 80s. But in any case, G.I. Joe would march on for just a little while longer, concluding its run midway through 1994. And as we wind down this particular history series, I do hope that you as a viewer can appreciate the information that I've tried to pack into these videos. When I first started this G.I. Joe history series, I was only just learning about the wealth of information sources that would come available as I progressed this story into the 1990s. Between all the various resources, it has been a pleasure to deliver this information to all of you. I'm also grateful for the deep information in websites such as 3djoes.com and the associated Art of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero Omnibus, as spearheaded by G.I. Joe Ambassador Carson Metaxas. Special mention should also go to Dan Klingensmith and his amazing Creating G.I. Joe 15-volume series that has also gone a long way to enhance my knowledge. Books like Toy Wars tell a fantastic tale of the toy industry in the 1990s, with a Hasbro direct focus. There have also been others like the aforementioned Articulated Points YouTube channel and the Joe Declassified group, all working to open up new avenues of knowledge for fellow G.I. Joe fans. And we can't forget the archiving crew over at Total Toy Books who have done a lot to broaden the knowledge of G.I. Joe's European cousin, Action Force. And this is just to name a few out of many who have done a lot as modern age curators of the brands that we love. All that's to say is that I'm happy to play my part in presenting the information to you all as the information comes available to me, and to use these retrospectives as time capsules to a more innocent and blissful time in our past. That said, this series is not over yet, so stay tuned as we conclude the discussion of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, when it comes time to talk about 1994. And if you happen to like this video, don't go anywhere just yet. I'm gonna put another G.I. Joe related history video that you can click on right over here, or to have a look at a completely different toy history topic, you can have a look at this video right over here. And with that, yo Joe, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching, and take care.